Hello everyone and welcome to another video on the Watts family murders. I'm Michelle and I'm coming at you today from a lovely summer's day in northern England. I do hope you're well. So in this video we're going to be looking at the surveillance that Chris Watts was put under on the 14th of August, just one day after Shanann and the girls supposedly went missing. On the 14th, it was still a missing persons inquiry, but lots of things were happening. So on the afternoon of the 14th, the dog searches took place through the house and in the local environment. I've got videos on the dog searches, so do go and check those out if you haven't seen them. Also, there was some neighbourhood canvassing, but lots of other things were going on behind the scenes. So in a moment, we're going to look at the surveillance reports that were produced by Longmont Police Department, who were drafted in to assist Frederick Police Department, which is only a small department. It's interesting what those surveillance reports detailed, because they seem to be aware of Nichol Kessinger, and I think they were. Even though she only came forward on the 15th, she came forward, I think, because she was aware Anadarko had given them her details. In terms of self-preservation and, making herself look completely innocent, she was interviewed by the FBI on the afternoon of the 15th. Again, I've got videos on this, and I've got that first interview that took place in Majestic Park in Arvada, the hometown of Nicole's father, Dwayne, who incidentally was there at her interviews, chipping in, controlling the narrative, one might say. Why she was interviewed in a park by the FBI? It's dreadful audio. Was that done purposefully? Is that the normal way that the FBI interviews people, even though she wasn't considered a suspect at that time? Or ever? Never? Before we go and look at those surveillance reports, just take a look at this. On the 14th of August 2018, investigative analyst Gillian Gansley responded to the Frederick Police Department to provide analytical assistance during a missing persons investigation. So she received a text from CBI agent Tammy Lee requesting me to preserve phone records for Shanann Watts and Chris Watts. She also asked if I could find and preserve Facebook records for both Shanann and Chris. I set 2 preservation requests to ATT Mobility for Chris and Shanann's phones. Around 3:50 p.m, I also submitted a preservation request for Shanann Watts' Facebook account. I was not able to locate an account for Chris Watts. Yeah, because he deleted his Facebook account the week before. After completing these requests, Agent Tammy Lee asked if I could come to Frederick Police Department to assist on scene. I arrived at Frederick PD at 6:34 p.m. and was briefed on updates. Whilst at the police department, I was forwarded information received from Tony Husky, manager with Anadarko, regarding Chris Watts' GPS records for July and August in his work vehicle. By placing the given coordinates in Google Maps, I was able to determine the likely path he took on the morning of the 13th and his first significant stop that morning. The information was shared with CBI, FBI and Frederick Police Department. I also ran any residential addresses that he spent significant time at through public and criminal databases to establish a pattern of life and any relevant associates. No persons of note were discovered through this analysis. I was also forwarded the initial returns from Verizon exigency request by FBI agent Kevin Hoyland. This report was for Chris Watts' work phone. I was asked to run the subscriber data and attempt to establish a timeline for Chris Watts on Sunday the 12th and Monday the 13th. Each unknown phone number was run through criminal and public data sources to identify the subscriber data. The information was forwarded to FBI agent Kevin Hoyland and CBI agent Tammy Lee. Once the information was forwarded, I uploaded the records on our cell phone analysis software GeoTime to analyse cell patterns and timeline information. The software automatically converts all data to Mountain Standard Time where applicable. Left Frederick PD around 11:30. The next morning at 8:07 a.m. I received information from CBI agent Stacey Galbraith that Chris Watts possibly had a girlfriend, Nikki Kessinger. This information was provided by Tony Husky, who's the manager at Anadarko. Husky forwarded an email communication between Kessinger and Watts that may be relevant. Agent Galbraith requested that I do a full workup on that individual. I completed searches in public and criminal justice databases to prepare a full and complete law enforcement support packet. The packet was forwarded to all relevant law enforcement personnel. And then, whilst on command post on the 15th, I received a cell record return from Verizon Wireless for Nichol Kessinger. Agent Kevin Hoyland and I agreed I would analyse that document for any relevant content, while he would analyse the phone tolls. I highlighted the document to illustrate any contact between Nichol Kessinger and Chris Watts, of which there was much throughout July and early August. Additionally, I received the returns from ATT for both Shanann Watts and Chris Watts' personal phones. I ran both returns through GeoTime, noted any relevant calls of interest, software automatically converts, blah, blah, blah. Throughout the rest of the day, I completed any necessary searches to identify contact information for relevant parties of interest. On 15th, I also received a copy of the Cellbrite cell phone dump that was done for Chris Watts' personal phone. So we're only interested in what they knew on the 14th, because that was what the surveillance team from Longmont PD would have been briefed on, I guess. I assume. We know that they became aware through Tony Husky on the 15th that there quite possibly was a girlfriend, but on the 14th they'd already done the GPS on his truck. If he'd ever stopped at her house in his truck, which quite possibly he did, then they would have probably known the address. Let's look at these Longmont reports. Okay, there are several of them because each officer did a report. These were actually done on the 17th, but the surveillance took place on the 14th from 1500 hours. All right, so this is Nathaniel McManus. On the 14th of August 2018, approximately 1500 hours, Detective Sergeant Harper, currently assigned to the Longmont Police Department Special Enforcement Unit, received a call from Sergeant Egan of Frederick Police Department to assist with missing persons inquiry. Sergeant Egan advised that a female suspect and her 2 children were reported missing from 2825 Saratoga Trail, and they wanted surveillance operations. So there was Sergeant Harper, Detective McManus, Detective Pollock, OFC, what does that stand for? Ormby and Townsend responded to the area and observed a white Lexus parked in front of the residence, while 2 suspects, a male and a female, were observed sitting on the steps of the front porch. That was Amanda Thayer and Nick Thayer, can't remember his name now, but the Thayers. So they're just friends. No suspicious information needed from them. It was later determined that these were associates of the male suspect. Sometime around 1830, Ormsby observed the male suspect, who had been identified as Christopher Lee Watts, exit the garage of the residence in the white Lexus. He exited the driveway eastbound out of sight for a few moments. Surveillance units then observed him stopped brown Ford pickup that appeared to be a fleet truck. That was his work truck. This vehicle was identified as belonging to Watts as a business-owned vehicle for Anadarko Oil Services. It was identified by State of Colorado registration plate. Information relayed to Sergeant Egan regarding this investigation was that Watts had been observed loading items into the vehicle early in the morning of the disappearance, which was described by neighbours as being unusual. That was Nate's testimony, wasn't it? He was at the vehicle for several minutes with the rear hatch of the Lexus open and the doors of the truck also open. I wonder what he was doing. He then departed but immediately returned to the truck for a few more moments. What was he removing from the truck, we want to know, but I don't think we ever found out. He departed the neighbourhood, travelling directly to Interstate 25 southbound. Surveillance units kept him in sight as he continued south into 136th Avenue, where he turned eastbound. He then turned north to Washington Street, travelled to Highway 7, turned east. Detective Steele arrived to assist with surveillance around this time. He then flipped a U-turn and travelled back to Interstate 25 northbound. He got off at Highway 52 travelling east and ultimately travelling directly to Frederick Police Department, where he's been requested for an interview with detectives. Detective Schultz arrived to assist around this time. After the interview was completed, Sergeant Egan advised that he believed Watts would travel to 12255 Claude Court in North Glen. Watts was observed leaving the police department following a blue sedan which came to the registered owners as the couple originally seen driving the other white Lexus SUV. Both vehicles drove directly to Thornton, that was the Thayers. Watts was observed entering the garage of this location. The blue sedan was parked in the garage next to the white Lexus, observed in front of Watts' residence at the beginning of the surveillance operation. Surveillance units were released at that time, no further actions. And very similar reports from the other officers. We don't need to read all those. But the upshot of this is that by the 14th, they knew where Chris had been going to. That's Nichol Kessinger's address. So they knew he'd been going there. Interesting, isn't it? So it's very fortunate for Nichol Kessinger that she did come forward. Did they fall for it, is the question. Did they fall for her narrative? Did they not bother looking at her any further? Why was her vehicle never searched? Why was her apartment never searched? Why weren't warrants issued for information that she might have? I mean, yeah, they took her phone, but we're left with so many questions because of this half-assed investigation, even though they knew on the 14th where Chris had been going. Interesting. Let me know your comments below. I've been Michelle. I do hope you're well, and I'll see you in the next video.